and candidates who are here today. We're excited to host this forum. And I just want to say that now more than ever, local journalism is incredibly important. And as Evanston prepares for its upcoming elections, the Daily Northwestern, the Evanston Roundtable, and Where the People Meet TV are really dedicated to providing accurate and engaging and transparent coverage. So we're really looking forward to this forum today and getting to talk about and ask questions about the issues that matter the most to Evanston.
And hello, can you all hear me? Okay. I'm Malika Gardner with Where the People Meet, and thank you, Lily. I called her up and said, let's organize a forum. It's crucial right now. And I wanted all the media to get together to really do this. And the roundtable said, we'll come on as panelists. So it's important that we get the right information out. So thank you so much for working with me on this. Thank you. The stakes are definitely high right now. And across the country, we see things shifting in policy, in power, in leadership. And Evanston is the same thing. We have a lot of shifting taking place. And some people see it as progress, and they're excited for what's to come. And then others see this shifting as a serious concern. So whether you agree with it or you don't agree, you support, you don't support, the point is it's leadership that matters. It matters. And this property that we're on right now, the history of this property, think about the leadership. Black families lived on this property. They had homes. It was the leadership back in what, 1930? 1929. The leadership decided they wanted this land. So they literally picked up the houses from the ground and moved them to the 5th Ward. That's how powerful leadership is. That's how powerful it is. And that's how powerful elections are. Because guess what? It can happen again. Might be happening right now, it just doesn't look the same. So we gotta pay attention. We gotta stay engaged. We gotta stay informed. And so I thank my media crew, friends here, Heidi Randhava, helping us out, my partner in crime, Don here, Percy, my mom, everybody, and all of you for coming out, because you could have been at the Super Bowl, watching the Super Bowl. But you put Evanston first, and that speaks volumes, and I thank you. So listen closely to all the candidates, the questions, and we will be coming out to get questions from you to ask the candidates. And thank you to the candidates. They're all coming at their different times. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for coming and take the tough questions from the panelists and the residents. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started and get this ball rolling. Okay, we're going to get this rolling. This is the 3rd Ward. The 3rd candidate declined. We have Gennifer Geer, and we have Mr. John Kennedy. If you guys can take 30 seconds to tell everyone who you are, and then we'll move into each ask each other a question, 30 seconds to respond.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name is Gennifer Geer. I'm running for City Council in the 3rd Ward. My professional background is really rooted in environmentalism. I currently work for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and I have a policy consulting business where I focus on renewable energy, particularly for public schools. I love Evanston. I moved here 5 years ago, and one of my favorite things about Evanston is that you have people from all walks of life and in all different stages of life. And so I'm running for City Council in hopes to bring the diversity to City Council in life stage that reflects the makeup of the city itself. I think that it is important to have younger voices, but also the voices of renters, of people who are lower income, especially when we are talking about some of these really big plans that are looking 25 years into the future. A major thing that is important to me is better transparency. My background in public service has been all about community engagement and making sure that we are listening to people, that we are communicating to people what the plans are, and incorporating feedback. I definitely have some priorities, but I think that investing in listening to the community is one of the biggest things that we're going to look for the next city council.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm John Kennedy. I've been a resident of Evanston for 40 years, and I've recently retired, and I've been somewhat engaged in city comings and goings over time. I was instrumental in saving the Civic Center back in 2007, but today I'm retired. I'm interested in giving back my skills coming out of starting 3 software businesses and running them tend to be looking at the financial situation in the city right now, which I think needs a lot of work. And the fact that we don't balance the budget is ridiculous. Second area that I'd like to do is reasonable rezoning. This is not a developer's giveaway. This has to be done, and there is no rush to get the comprehensive plan done. This is wrong. There's just something not right in River City. And the final thing is transparency. I will not stand to watch decisions go down without public full disclosure.
John, your question for Jennifer.
Oh, you know, the city, Mayor Biss and others have been pushing this put the assets to work approach, which means selling assets to the city. What are your thoughts on that?
30 seconds.
I think that the worst thing for the city is vacancy and depreciating assets. So I think that with the perspective of it's probably better now to make a decision today rather than in 10 years when we have a vacant property, I think that is a good approach for analyzing how the city can use its assets. I think for any remaining buildings that we have, I'd hate to see a repeat of the Harley Clark Mansion situation where the city delayed and did nothing and then ended up with what was more or less the initial proposed solution.
And yours for me.
John, you've been really vocal and specific about decisions you'd like to see City Council make and changes to capital improvement projects. I appreciate your input, and I'm curious how, because you have those predetermined specifics, how you'll incorporate resident feedback and listening into how you govern.
Key aspect in a capital program is to have some decent, prioritization. You don't start off with a wish list. And staff have told me, we put everything into the capital improvement, and we're expecting the council to cut it back. Guess what? The council doesn't have the time. They don't take the time to go through each individual capital improvement proposal. They take them all and say, this is what we got to do. So we start with prioritization of those capital items, first by staff in terms of, there's a lot of it that has to be done. Infrastructure, safety, that type of thing. Maintenance on buildings, oh my gosh. It's something that the city just doesn't know how to put into the capital improvement process. But there are some nice to haves, and we have to be diligent in terms of looking at a budget and saying, what can we afford to do? And then let's go about and maybe take those choices, as we get down to the options, you take that to the community and say, what do you think?
Sure that works. So Vision Evanston has come up here as it has in other races that we've talked through today, but one area specifically for the third ward is, of course, the Chicago Avenue corridor. Want to ask both of you, what is your vision for Chicago Avenue's development over the next 4 years? It could be in terms of what types of uses, how much residential density there is, building height, and how does that or should that fit into the ward overall, how it connects to the residential neighborhood to the east of the corridor? 90 seconds each.
Well, I happen to be living one street away from the Chicago Avenue. I'm on Inman. And the idea of a 100-foot tall, 10-story building, monolith, backing up against my neighbors across the street, including Melissa Wynn, is ridiculous. It's just, there's no transition, there's no sensitivity. It's one thing to have a 10-story building down at Main and Chicago, and then it slopes down from there. But it's another thing to basically do both sides of the corridor at 100 feet. We're talking about a canyon. It's ridiculous. So that's number one. Number two, parking. You know, downtown has the luxury of having 3 large garages. That's not true in the third ward. You know, we don't have those lots that are near our shopping districts. As a result, any development that goes in there has to have adequate parking. And frankly, the transit-oriented development is a myth in a lot of ways. And I'll tell you what, we polled, Jeff Smith and I polled the data, registered cars in Evanston. We aligned it across 15 different buildings, built since 2000. 65% of the residents in those 2,500 units have a car. And if you don't have parking for at least 65, 70% in the building, where are they going to go? They're going to be on the street. And in third ward, we don't have parking on the street, especially south of Main. Thank you.
But Mr. Kennedy, you have 10 seconds to wrap it up if you want to finish that thought.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Jennifer.
We're neighbors. I also live on Hinman, but I live behind the giant building at Chicago and Main in the ground. And I am excited for the prospect of Chicago Avenue being a mixed-use space, but I think it has to be done smartly. I don't think it makes sense to have a 100-foot building right next to a single-family home that, for historic district reasons, can't be significantly changed. So I do see adding some larger apartment buildings, but capping the height so that we can add some density, but without imposing on the single-family homes and historic homes that are there. A transition space makes more sense to me. If you walk down Main Street toward the lake, it goes from being very dense to more residential, and I'd like to see that mimicked further north, closer to Dempster. I think that it is a good idea for us to take advantage of our transit system, but we also need to invest in our transit system before we expect people to be able to move away from car reliance. So along Chicago Avenue, I think it is important that we get accessible bus stops, that we get accessible train stations. Some of the CTA stations have elevators or are accessible, and that is a deterrent for people not only with mobility issues, but with strollers and groceries and luggage. You can't use transit for everyday life. So I would like to see the city invest more in our transit systems before we move to assuming that people just won't have cars. I think it's also important for us to protect our green space and our parks, as well as invest in like the parks that we have. So along Chicago Avenue, if all of that was developed into tall buildings, I think that would be a travesty.
10 seconds.
But we have some open space that currently visually is seen in the surface lots that we can incorporate into parks as that develops.
So obviously the lakefront is a key aspect of the third ward, and we've heard a lot about activity on the lakefront over the last few years, and especially the use of the lakefront for city purposes. I'm thinking like the folk festival, for example. So what do you think is the right amount of public investment and public activity on the lakefront? 60 seconds.
I think it's important for us to protect the lakefront. I would like to see a lakefront protection ordinance that codifies not developing the lakefront for commercial purposes. But I think it's also important for us to maintain our parks, add some bike paths and pedestrian paths, and also keep the things that make Evanston fun. I think the Folk Fest is a great cultural opportunity for the city to be a destination. People come to see the lakefront, but they also come to see each other, to have a moment of community. So I think that the city should, of course, make the lakefront accessible, but also keep it someplace that we can use for fun and for community.
You know, I've been a sailor for 60 years, so I love the lake. We have to keep it sacred, which I think we will. That's, you know, nobody's going to be building a development down on the lakefront. But from a community standpoint, you know, the essence of a community is when they get together and they talk to each other and they enjoy each other and they have fun together. And so opportunities like, you know, festivals, you know, the old ethnic art fair, craft fair that was there, and even with Councilmember Kelly, who fought to put in, you know, a little cafe ice cream shop right down there at the lakefront. These are all positive things that help build a community. And I do believe strongly that the city should sponsor. I mean, we've got some good programs with a lot of young people, getting them into the lake, getting them used to boats, getting them out on the lake. That needs to be expanded to include the whole community. And and it may need some recruitment to do that, but this is one of the gems that makes Evanston beautiful and attractive. And we got to maintain it and build on it in a good, reasonable way. Thank you.
Great, and now we're going to take one resident question.
And I suggest one.
Here's your only third ward resident. Come on,
Swear there'd be some other third ward residents here, but okay. So I guess what I'll ask is, it's come up the healthy buildings ordinance has come up a few times tonight. Now neither of you are currently in office, but just, if you could explain a little bit about your stance on where that process is at. Would you vote for the version of the ordinance that will be before council tomorrow? And if not, what concerns you might still have?
Well, the interesting thing is, we might kid ourselves about renewable energy coming over the electric lines, but the vast majority of the electricity being supplied to Evanston is not renewable. That's point number one. So pushing landlords, homeowners to buy credits, because that's probably what you end up doing, is not, you're putting costs into the system without a good outcome. Second area is in requiring some of these existing older buildings that are primarily driven by, hot water boilers, steam, and so on, to retrofit to electricity is hugely expensive. Talk about affordability in housing. You're going to wipe these people out. So, some common sense issues with regard to this. Now, I'm a big renewable person. I've been pushing the city for years to do geothermal. Biden got the IRA, and it was a 40% credit. Did the city do anything about it? No. No, they didn't. And this is why I'm tired of throwing stones outside the castle. I got to get inside the castle to talk.
I think that the Healthy Buildings Ordinance is something that we definitely should move forward with. When it comes to climate resiliency and climate action, we need a long runway because, as John pointed out, a lot of these retrofits are expensive. That's why there's 25 years to do them. That's why there's some flexibility in how it is implemented. And I think that the longer we delay starting that transition, the less likely it is that we're going to meet our goals as a city. When it comes to having more clean energy. I do think that Evanston can embrace renewable energy generation. We don't have clear guidelines for how to implement solar on a home. We don't have resources for residents to be able to make their homes more energy efficient and embrace renewable energy generation. That's my professional background, so I will say that as a state, we have community solar as an option that the city kind of has nudged, but that we can do a better job of educating people on, that you don't need your own panels in order to subscribe to renewable energy. I think we have some opportunities with the lakefront and like wave motion when the technology gets there, but we need to be, as a community, ready to embrace that rather than resisting any change because it's going to be expensive in 20 years.
And then I'll give you each 30 seconds to just wrap up and give us your last little spiel.
Okay. Well, I thank you all for being here. I think something that didn't come up in questions was making sure that we have a thriving business community, so I'm going to spend my time addressing that a bit. I think that the city of Evanston should have a vacancy tax or some kind of fine for retail storefronts that are open for more than 2 years. We have we have a lot of vacant storefronts that are clearly not being put out at market rate, that is denying the city valuable sales tax revenue, property tax revenue, and I would like to see some investment in making sure that retail storefronts are being filled, that we have a thriving business life, and that we make it easy to start a new business in Evanston. There should be an easy checklist for prospective entrepreneurs to go to. I think overall as a city, we have a lot of great opportunities in the next 25 years, since 2050 seems to be the goal for a lot. And I would love to see us embrace being a progressive city that makes those kinds of adjustments and sets a long-term vision, not just being reactive to how we're feeling in the moment, but instead creating the city that we want to live in. Appreciate y'all.
So, when I mentioned to my daughter that I was going to run for alderperson, she said, "Dad, don't run. Back some young person, be their advisor." So here I am, an old white guy with a young person next to me who's got all the ideas. But I want to add one idea on the renewable. Community geothermal. Imagine putting a couple of wells down in your alley and running the pipes to each house for heating and cooling. It can be done. There's a whole department of what soon will be the ex-Department of Energy in Washington, talking about community geothermal. But anyway, getting back to my closing arguments, I would like to serve the city of Evanston for the next 4 years. I have the time. I believe I have the talents that I can contribute and help the council make better decisions. I don't see a lot of business people on the council today. We need different components. We need an attorney, we need financial, we need accounting, we need somebody with business sense, and that's what I'd like to contribute. And I believe in Evanston long-term. I think it's a wonderful community, but it's at a pivot point right now. We've got to get our financial act together, or we're going to go the direction of D65, and that's not fun. Anyway, thank you.